Hello, welcome back to History of Wine and the Vine. I'm Emily Kate. So this week we're going to be continuing with our wordplay extravaganza series. And whereas before we've been talking about kind of the home runs and mishaps of the kind of words having to do with wine specifically, today we're going to be talking about things that have to do with wine in a more general sense. So for instance, right off the bat, we'll start going back to ancient Israel. And in ancient Israel, there was actually a kind of very common thing, which was having a banquet. So as we talked about in the kind of ancient Israeli discussion, banquets are pretty common, and they could be for any number of different things, like if you finished a harvest or you finished shearing your sheep. It's kind of the end of physical labor, or if you were having kind of a life cycle event. So not just weddings or maybe birthdays, but actually like the weaning of a child, different things like this could be cause for banquets. So what was so different about a banquet, you might be wondering, from a regular meal? Obviously there would be food, but there would also be dancing, and we get kind of the most important clue of how different it is from a meal, which is based around food, because the word for banquet is actually misteh. M-I-S-T-E-H is how we kind of transliterate it, and it's from the verb to drink. So we get from this word kind of an explanation of what makes a banquet so interesting. You were definitely encouraged to drink at a banquet to the point of inebriation, which brings us to words concerning inebriation. How nice was that? So if we go back to ancient Mesopotamia, we have lots of different kind of ways of making an alcoholic beverage. So you could make it out of dates, you could make it out of grapes, you could make it out of kind of grain, you could make it out of anything. And because of this, there are different words for each of these different kind of styles of alcohol instead of just one main alcohol word. And so two of these words that are interesting are karanu, which is wine, and shikaru, which is beer. And what I love about these words is that if you kind of mash them together, you get the word for inebriation, which is shakaru. So you have karanu and shikaru, and you put them together to get shakaru, which is inebriation. So kind of continuing with the ancient Mesopotamia theme, we actually know for certain that they did not mix their wine, which is incredibly rare in ancient times, because if you think about Rome and Greece, these wines were diluted, they were watered down, but the ancient Mesopotamians didn't do that, and we know that because of different words that they had in their language to kind of denote what they were doing to the wines. So the wines were actually described as wine mixers. So if you were drinking something, you could be drinking wine, but you could also be drinking a wine mixer, which was samihu, and it actually made the wine stronger. So whereas everybody was busy diluting wine in Rome and Greece, and we kind of think of them as quite heavy drinking civilizations, in ancient Mesopotamia, they were making the wine stronger. And so definitely something to think about. And the Akkadian word that was actually used was the verb hiaku, H-I-A-Q-U, hiaku, and this actually meant to like ameliorate, so to make better, to make stronger, to salvage. And so these kinds of words definitely let us know what they were doing to the wine. You're not salvaging a wine by putting water in it. And so as well, we have two kind of words that are representative in Akkadian, and one of them is dispu, and that's barley, and then the other one is karanu, like we talked about, which is wine. And these words are actually used in the sense of when somebody's describing something that's really lovely, like how we, in the biblical term, have the land overflowing with milk and honey. Here they're talking about honey. Did I say barley? Honey and wine. So you have a land overflowing kind of with honey and wine. Now, what did this mean? Because they didn't have honey in ancient Babylonia until about 2000 BC, when beekeeping became kind of a thing. So what they're actually talking about here is grape syrup, And grape syrup was, as we discussed earlier, kind of used as a sweetener, and it was one of the only sweeteners that was actually available. So it wasn't always kind of super literal what people were talking about, and we actually have a word that was used for wine in ancient Greece that tells us a lot about how people saw wine and what its function was. And if you'll remember correctly, ancient Greece had a lot more of a temperate and what we today would probably call a healthy view of wine, as if you compare them to ancient Rome. So ancient Rome was a lot about getting quite drunk and having a good time. And ancient Greek was about drinking a little bit and having it loosen the tongue and discuss things and kind of have debates and conversation. And they actually, one of the words that was used for wine was katoptron. And this katoptron actually means also mirror. So it was said that wine was the mirror of the soul, so that if you had wine, people could see your soul because you would talk all day long and tell them everything in your deepest chamber of secrets. So I find these kind of wordplay things very interesting. I hope you do too. If you do, give the video a nice thumbs up, big old like, and subscribe because there'll always be more lectures to come. And I'll see you next week. Cheers!